The Secret of the Indian by Reid Chapter 12. Caught Red-Handed. Boone came to that afternoon. Matron had been exceedingly busy since the surgical team came. She hustled and bustled them across the seed tray, chatting to them all the time, in an isn't this interesting and also perfectly normal sort of voice, and before they knew it they were doing their stuff in a makeshift operating theater with the aid of a powerful torch and relays of tiny containers. It was Emma's job to keep these coming, though she gave them to Bright Stars to carry into the team. One lot contained boiling water with a few drops of disinfectant in it. The other lot contained boiling water with tea, sugar, and milk in it. On one occasion, Matron apparently mistook the one for the other, and a great deal of coughing and sputtering ensued. As Boone didn't need an operation, he had been established in a bed, which Emma, under Omri's guidance, made of a large swan Vestas matchbox, filled with neatly folded Kleenex, and a small pincushion pillow, set up in a far corner of the seed tray, out of sight of the longhouse and its occupants. He was watched over by Bright Stars, and occasionally visited by Little Bear, who would stray near the bed as if by accident and peer at Boone's face scowlingly, before stamping off again with a grunt of disfavor. But at last, Bright Stars called to Omri and Emma, who were just returning from the garden after conducting a brief burial service over the paper packet of plastic figures. Omri's family were not churchgoers, but Emma managed a prayer of sorts, and even thought of putting some tiny flowers on the grave. "Boone, wake!" Bright Stars said, shifting her baby's slight weight from one arm to the other. Her face was wreathed in smiles. She was very fond of Boone, since he had stood by to help her during the birth of her baby. Omri and Emma leaned close to the matchbox bed and saw that, sure enough, Boone had opened his eyes and was trying to sit up. When he saw Omri looming over him, his ginger, bristly face broke into a sloppy grin. "Hi there, partner," he said rather croakily. "What happened to me this time? Did that there sneaky redskin varmint shoot another arrow into me, or what?" "I'm afraid it was Patrick," confessed Omri. "He didn't mean it. He just squeezed you too tight." "Yeah, that'd explain why my ribs feel like they're broke." "Well, they're not, just bruised, but you nearly suffocated." Boone paled. "Suffocated? You mean like when they string you up? Geez, that always been my worst nightmare, kicking the bucket that-a-way. Never would have thought of old Pat being so doggone careless. Where is the kid, anyhow? And who's this?" he added, suddenly noticing Emma. "This is Emma, Boone. She's a friend of ours. Emma, this is Boone. He's a cowboy from Texas." Emma stretched out her hand, and Boone solemnly took hold of the nail of one finger and shook it. "A real privilege, ma'am," he said courteously. He stared at her for a moment. "You know, with that fair hair of yourn, and them eyes blue as a midday sky, you sure remind me of a lady of my acquaintance. Of course, you're a mite younger than she is." He stared a while longer and then shook himself and said brightly, "Hey, I'm feeling better every minute. You know, there ain't nothing like being close to a beautiful female for bringing a red-blooded dying man back to the land of the living, unless it's—" and he gave a meaningful swallow. Omri sighed and glanced at Emma. "You want a drink?" he said resignedly. "Just a little shot," Boone wheedled, indicating the minutest possible portion between finger and thumb. "Best cure there is for suffocation." "Oh, okay," said Omri laughingly. "I'll fetch you some. Emma, you chat with him. Tell him where Patrick is. That ought to keep his mind off his thirst." Omri went downstairs to the living room where the drinks cupboard was. His father was no drinker, but he always kept a bottle of scotch and some wine and beer handy, together with glasses of the appropriate sizes and shapes. Omri chose a tiny liquor glass, and was just pouring a small portion of scotch into it, when his father walked into the room and caught him red-handed. "Omri, what on earth are you up to?" The question was not angry, merely incredulous. Omri stood there, with the whiskey bottle in one hand and the tiny glass in the other, the very picture of guilt. I'm pouring a drink." "That's the wrong glass for scotch," said his father, as if he couldn't think of anything else to say. He walked across, took the bottle out of Omri's hand, and replaced the top. There was silence, and he said, "Well, you've poured it. You might as well drink it." Omri stared at the brown liquid in the glass. He wanted to say, "It's not for me," or "I don't want it," but he knew that if he did, more questions, unanswerable questions, would be sure to follow. He took a deep breath, and with a feeling like despair, he swallowed it in one gulp. The stuff was horrible. It seemed to stick in his throat, making him choke. His eyes sprouted tears. When it finally went down, it burned all the way and hit his unsuspecting stomach like a small depth charge. He was aware that his father was watching him curiously. "Evidently you're not really into hard liquor," he remarked, looking at Omri's scarlet face and teary eyes. Omri said nothing. "Just an experiment?" "Was it?" his father persisted in a man-to-man tone. "Sort of," croaked Omri. "Well, try anything once, that's my motto too. Just once, in this case, okay." He put the bottle away firmly. Omri moved toward the door, trying to get rid of the filthy taste in his mouth. Just as he got there, his father said, "I think it's time I drove them back." "Who? Oh, Emma, you mean? And Patrick." "Patrick?" repeated Omri, startled. "He is up in your room, isn't he?" Yes, but he's asleep." "What do you mean?" "He was dead tired and fell asleep, and, well, I thought he might stay the night," gabbled Omri. "Is that okay with his mother?" Omri mumbled something and then said, "I'll tell Emma to come down." Later, Emma made a secret phone call to Omri from her home and said that she told Patrick's mother that Patrick had returned safely to Omri's after his bicycle ride, so tired he'd fallen asleep right away, and that, though annoyed, Patrick's mother had resigned herself to staying in town for another night. "I'll just give him tonight," said Omri. "What he said about staying a week is ridiculous. I'll bring him back in the morning." Emma said nothing for a moment and then said, "I hated having to leave. I don't want to miss anything. Will you please give my love to Boone and Bright Stars and Little Bear and the baby and the matron?" "Matron wouldn't appreciate it," said Omri. "She's above all that." But something in the intensity of feeling in Emma's voice pleased him. "I'll see you at school tomorrow," he went on, "and don't forget, not a word to anyone. No exceptions. Promise?" And Emma replied, I already did promise." But just the same, Omri hardly slept all night. And that is the end of chapter 12.